dark, and let the veils of time recede. Listen not with your ears, but with the soul's ancient memory, for the tale I tell is not of men or kings, but of the very breath before the first dawn. It is a story whispered in the hum of the void, a chronicle etched in the heart of a star before it was born. This is the lore of what was, when not was, the genesis of being from the womb of unbeing. 1. Opening atmosphere. Before the concept of before, there was only the great unknowing. Imagine, if you can, an ocean without shore, without surface, without depth. This was the Mahashunya, the absolute void. It was not mere emptiness, for emptiness implies a container that is empty. This was the absence of containment itself. It was a presence of nothingness, a sovereign darkness that was not the opposite of light, but the very principle from which the idea of light had yet to be conceived. There was no up, nor down, no here nor there. All direction was a paradox yet to be born. The silence was its most profound and terrifying feature. It was not a quiet that could be broken, but a fundamental constitutional silence, the very texture of existence in its primordial state. It was a stillness so absolute that the mere thought of motion would be a cataclysm. Within this silent, fathomless expanse, time did not flow. It lay coiled and dormant, a serpent that had not yet dreamed of devouring its own tail. Eons were indistinguishable from an instant, for the very mechanism of measurement was unwrought. The darkness itself possessed a quality that the mortal mind struggles to grasp. It was not black, for black is a color, a thing to be perceived. This was a devouring, palpable nullity. It was a velvety, viscous shroud that absorbed all potential, all thought, all possibility. It had a weight, a pressure that was uniform and infinite, a cosmic compression that ensured nothing could ever arise. It was the ultimate state of rest, the divine slumber of the unmanifested absolute, Parabrahman, in its deepest trance. Yet within this perfect and eternal stasis, something was amiss. It was not a sound, for sound required a medium. It was not a sight, for sight required light and an eye. It was a vibration. A tremor so subtle it was less than a whisper, a dissonance in the perfect chord of nothingness. It was like a single, stray thought in a mind that had been cleared for millennia. This nascent disturbance was an anomaly, an infinitesimal impurity in the otherwise flawless purity of the void. It was a question posed to an existence that had never known inquiry, and it began to hum, a low, resonant frequency that did not travel through space, but rather was the first stirring of space itself. This hum was the first dream of the sleeping cosmos, a promise of terror and of glory, a portent that the long, silent reign of the Mahashunya was drawing to a close. The darkness, for the first time in its eternal existence, seemed to thicken around this nascent thrum, as if a body, long asleep, had unconsciously tensed a muscle in response to a disquieting dream. The stage for creation was not being set. The very idea of a stage was being painstakingly and agonizingly conceived. 2. Origin context. To comprehend the source of this primordial tremor, one must look beyond the veil of creation, past the cycles of yugas and manvantaras, to the state that precedes all states. The sages, in their deepest meditations, have glimpsed this truth: the universe does not arise from nothing, but rather from everything in a state of perfect, unrealized potential. This is the nature of the Parabrahman, the ultimate reality, which is without attributes, without form, without beginning or end. It is neither he nor she, light nor dark, existent nor non-existent. It is the isness beyond all definitions. For uncounted ages, this absolute remained in a state of perfect equilibrium, a divine contemplation so profound that it was indistinguishable from non-existence. This was the cosmic night, the pralaya, where all creation, all gods, all demons, all stories, and all souls were withdrawn and dissolved back into their source, like rivers returning to an infinite ocean. The three guna sattva purity, rajas passion, and tamas inertialayi in a state of perfect, undifferentiated balance. The void, the Mahashunya, was the physical manifestation of this state, the ultimate expression of tamas, the dark inertia that underpins all matter and all unconsciousness. But even within the absolute, a will can stir. Not a will of thought or intention as mortals understand it, for that requires a mind, a duality of thinker and thought. This was a sankalpa, a cosmic impulse, a spontaneous and inexplicable stirring of desire. Why does the unmanifest desire to manifest? It is a question that has haunted philosophers for eternity. Perhaps it is the nature of joy to seek expression. Perhaps it is the nature of consciousness to seek an object to be conscious of. Or perhaps it is simply the rhythm of the cosmic breath, an exhalation that must, by its very nature, follow an inhalation. This sankalpa, this first divine volition, was the seed of the coming universe. It was an idea so potent that it disturbed the perfect balance of the gunas. It was a surge of pure rajas, the principle of action and passion, injecting itself into the slumbering tamas of the void. This primordial desire did not seek to create light or form directly, but rather it sought a vessel for its own contemplation. It willed into being a focal point, a nexus where the infinite potential of the unmanifest could be concentrated into a finite, manifest potential. Thus, the vibration in the void was born. It was the sound of the sankalpa echoing through the nothingness. From this divine will, the first flickers of cosmic energy, Adi Shakti, began to coalesce. Imagine infinitesimally small motes of latent power, previously scattered and inert throughout the infinite void, now being drawn by an unseen gravitational force of pure intention. They swirled and gathered, spiraling inward from the boundless dark, leaving vast swaths of the void even more bereft than before. They were drawn to that single point of dissonance, the hum that had become the anchor for a new reality. Over eons that were not yet eons, this energy compressed, folded in on itself, becoming denser and more vibrant, a gathering storm of pure possibility in the heart of the eternal calm. The cosmos was pregnant, and its womb was beginning to form. 3. The building tension. The gathering of primordial energy was not a swift or gentle process. It was a war waged on a scale beyond comprehension, a silent, titanic struggle between the nascent impulse of being and the established absolute dominion of unbeing. As the motes of Adi Shakti coalesced, they began to generate an internal friction, a heat that was the antithesis of the void's absolute cold. This burgeoning warmth was the first hint of tapas, the cosmic ascetic heat that fuels creation. At the heart of the swirling vortex, a form began to take shape. It was not forged or built, but rather condensed from the raw potentiality of the sankalpa. It became a sphere, a perfect and seamless orb, the most fundamental of all shapes. And as the energy intensified, it began to glow, not with a harsh, piercing light, but a soft, internal, golden luminescence, like honey infused with the heart of a dying star. This was the Hiranyagarbha, the golden egg, the cosmic womb. Its appearance was an act of ultimate defiance. In the heart of the featureless, textureless dark, there now hung this single, incandescent object. It was a wound in the perfection of the void, a solitary sun in a sky that had never known a sky. Its golden light did not penetrate far into the oppressive darkness. The gloom seemed to drink the light, to smother it only a short distance from its source, creating a small, sacred sphere of illumination in an infinite ocean of night. The void, which for so long had been a passive entity, now seemed to react. The darkness pressed in upon the Hiranyagarbha, its infinite weight seeking to crush this anomaly, to extinguish its impertinent glow and restore the universe to its proper, silent state. The absolute cold seeped towards it, attempting to leach the tapas from its core. The primordial silence, that great and terrible symphony of nothing, sought to overwhelm the soft internal hum that emanated from the egg, a sound that was growing in complexity and pitch. It was the sound of a universe dreaming of itself, a melody of nascent physics, of laws yet to be written, of life yet to be conceived. For an age that would later be measured as 100 divine years a span of time, utterly meaningless and yet crushingly long, this standoff persisted. The Hiranyagarbha hung suspended, a solitary point of defiance. It grew brighter, hotter, its hum evolving into a complex symphony, the cosmic chant of Om taking its first hesitant form. Inside its golden shell, the unimaginable was happening. The balanced gunas, which had been disturbed by the initial sankalpa, were now at war. Rajas, the fiery energy of creation, churned and battled against the tamasic inertia that formed the very substance of the shell, while sattva, the principle of light and purity, sought to bring order and form to the chaos within. From an external perspective, if one could exist, the golden egg would appear to be pulsing, its light waxing and waning in a slow, rhythmic beat, like a cosmic heart. Each pulse sent a faint ripple of energy out into the void, a shockwave of existence that disturbed the slumber of nothingness. The darkness would recoil, then press in again, an endless cycle of cosmic pressure and resistance. The tension was palpable, a strain on the very non-fabric of reality. The Hiranyagarbha was a seed planted in the most barren soil imaginable, and the pressure required for it to germinate was building to an unbearable, impossible crescendo. Something had to break. The perfect symmetry of the egg, or the perfect emptiness of the void. The universe held its non-breath, waiting for the inevitable schism. 4. The main event. The breaking point arrived not with a thunderous declaration, but with a subtle internal shift. Within the incandescent core of the Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic symphony of Om, which had been steadily rising in pitch and complexity, reached a note of impossible purity and power. It was the creative logos, the word made manifest as vibration. This final, ultimate frequency resonated through the very structure of the golden shell, and for the first time, the perfect sphere shuddered. A tremor ran across its luminous surface, a visible wave of stress that caused its golden light to flicker, casting monstrous dancing shadows against the encroaching void. Inside, a consciousness stirred. It was not yet a self, not yet an I, but a nascent awareness adrift in a sea of pure, undiluted potential. It was a point of view without eyes, a center of feeling without a body. This was the Prajapati, the Lord of Beings, in his preconceptual form. He felt the immense, crushing pressure of the void from without and the explosive, creative ferment from within. He was the fulcrum of this cosmic battle, and his own awakening was the catalyst for its climax. He did not think, he was the thought of creation itself. His first sensation was of a profound, unbearable loneliness, a solitude so absolute it demanded a universe to fill it. This desire, this primal ache for companionship and for otherness, was the final key. A sound, the first true sound, tore through the fabric of the cosmos. It was not the hum, but a sharp, crystalline crack. On the gleaming surface of the Hiranyagarbha, a fracture appeared. It was a line of darkness on a field of gold, a fissure no wider than a hair, yet it was a wound from which a new reality would bleed. Through this tiny crack, a sliver of light escaped, not the soft, contained glow of the egg, but a raw, untamed, ferocious beam of pure creative energy. It was the light of 1 billion supernovas concentrated into a single ray, and it sliced through the ancient darkness, illuminating the void for an immeasurable distance. The darkness recoiled, not merely pushed back, but fundamentally changed, for where this light touched, the void was no longer a nullity, but had become space. The Prajapati within felt this release as a gasp, the first breath of existence. The pressure lessened infinitesimally, and his consciousness began to coalesce. He perceived the sound of the crack not with ears, but as the foundational tone of his own being, the pranava, the sacred syllable Om splitting into its constituent parts, A-U-M. The sound of creation, maintenance, and dissolution, all born in a single instant. The first crack was followed by another and another, branching out from the original fissure like lightning across a golden sky. The shell, which had contained the totality of potential for a divine century, was failing. The sounds of its breaking were the birth pangs of the universe, each snap and groan defining a new law of physics, each splintering echo setting the rhythm of cosmic time. Then came the grand schism. With a deafening, silent roar that was both sound and light, pressure and release, the Hiranyagarbha split asunder. It did not merely break, it unfolded. The upper half of the golden shell, gleaming and vast, ascended, its concave interior becoming the vault of the heavens, the Svargaloka. Its residual glow scattered and cooled, forming the first constellations, the Saptarishi and the distant nebulas. The lower half of the shell, heavier and more dense, descended, its convex surface becoming the foundation of the earth, the Bhumi. The jagged, broken edges of this terrestrial bowl became the first mountains, their golden peaks scraping a sky that had just been born. The cosmic fluids within, the golden yolk and the silvery albumin, were flung outward. The viscous, incandescent yolk pooled in the depressions of the Bhumi, its immense heat slowly cooling to form the oceans of molten gold and precious metals that lay at the world's core. The shimmering, ethereal albumin expanded, thinning into the life-giving ether and the atmosphere, the antariksha, the space between heaven and earth. The membrane that had once encased it all became the very fabric of space-time, a tapestry upon which the future would be woven. And there, at the epicenter of this glorious and violent birth, floating in the newly formed space, was the being who had been gestating within. He was no longer a mere point of awareness. From the heart of the creative light, a form unfurled like a lotus blooming in an instant. a divine body of luminous gold with 4 arms and, most mysteriously, 4 faces, each gazing upon one of the cardinal directions of the new, empty space. In his hands he held the seeds of all knowledge, the 4 Vedas, not as books but as living, breathing vibrations of cosmic truth. This was Brahma, the creator. His eyes, all 8 of them, opened simultaneously, and for the first time the universe was perceived. What he saw was a void that was no longer a void, but a vast, empty canvas, shimmering with the residual energy of its own birth. He saw the golden bowl of the earth below and the star-dusted dome of the heavens above. He saw the immensity, the silence, the utter and profound emptiness of his own creation. A single tear, forged of pure sattva, of creation's joy and loneliness, fell from one of his eyes. It streaked across the new space and fell upon the nascent earth, becoming the first sacred river, a promise of the life that was to come. He took his first breath, and the act of his inhalation drew the nebulae into swirling patterns. He exhaled, and his breath was the first wind, whispering across the barren, golden plains of the world. He was alone, he was all, and his work had just begun. 5. I am immediate aftermath. The echoes of the great sundering faded, replaced by a new kind of silence. It was not the absolute, oppressive silence of the Mahashunya, but the expectant hush of a grand hall after the orchestra has ceased, the air still trembling with the ghost of music. The universe was a newborn, its senses raw and its form still settling. The raw, violent light of the cracking Hiranyagarbha softened, its energy diffusing throughout the vast new expanse of space. This residual light was the first dawn, a pearlescent ambient glow that had no single source but illuminated everything with a gentle, ethereal radiance. Brahma, floating in the cosmic medium, looked out from his 4 faces, his consciousness expanding to encompass the sheer scale of his domain. To the east he saw the shimmering potential of beginnings, to the south the framework of cosmic law and order, to the west the nascent shadows where endings would one day dwell, to the north the path to liberation and divine knowledge. He saw it all simultaneously, a holistic and overwhelming vision of the empty stage he was now tasked to fill. The loneliness he had felt as a pre-conscious impulse now returned to him as a fully realized emotion, a divine melancholy that was as vast as the creation around him. The weight of purpose settled upon his 4 heads like an invisible crown. He felt the new laws of reality solidifying around him. Time, which had been a coiled serpent, now began to unspool, flowing forward in a linear, inexorable stream. Causality was born, the cracking of the egg was the first cause, and he, Brahma, was its first effect. The very space he occupied had dimension and texture. He could feel the faint pull of the new earth below him, the first stirring of gravity. The remnants of the Hiranyagarbha's shell, flung to the farthest reaches of the new cosmos, continued to cool and fragment, their golden light forming protostars, their substance the dust from which galaxies would one day coalesce. The universe was a canvas, but it was not static. It was a dynamic, evolving system from its very first moments. To ground himself, to impose the first act of deliberate order upon the sublime chaos, Brahma acted. He brought his hands together, not in a clap, but in a gesture of sacred contemplation. From the depths of his being, he drew forth the sound he had heard at his own conception, the eternal pranava. He opened his first mouth, the one facing east, and uttered the sound O-M. The effect was instantaneous and profound. The single syllable, a wave of pure creative vibration, expanded outward in a perfect sphere from his being. It was not a sound that traveled through the air, for the air was still too thin and new. It was a wave that traveled through the very fabric of space-time. As it passed, it brought coherence. The chaotic swirls of cosmic dust began to form gentle, spiraling patterns. The raw elements born from the cosmic fluid ether, air, fire, water, and earth began to stratify and find their natural places. The hum of the universe, which had been a dissonant chord of raw power, was now tuned to this fundamental note. The syllable OM became the resonant frequency of reality, the underpinning vibration that would hold the cosmos together. It was the first mantra, the first law, the first act of divine will imposed upon the raw matter of potential. The empty silence was filled not with noise, but with a deep, pervasive, and orderly hum. The universe had found its voice. 6. Deeper consequences. The utterance of the pranava marked a fundamental shift from unconscious becoming to conscious creation. Having established the foundational harmony of existence, Brahma's gaze turned inward. He understood that the vast, empty world he had inherited was but a vessel. It needed substance, it needed life, it needed meaning. He settled into a posture of meditation, his lotus seat materializing from his own navel, a symbol of purity growing from the center of his being. He closed all 8 of his eyes and began the first and greatest act of cosmic contemplation. In this divine samadhi, he did not merely think, his thoughts became the archetypes of reality. He contemplated the nature of the gunas that had warred within his cosmic egg. From this contemplation, he willed them into their distinct forms, separating the luminous, balanced nature of sattva, the fiery, kinetic energy of rajas, and the heavy, inertial darkness of tamas. These were not just philosophical concepts. They became the fundamental forces that would govern the consciousness of all beings yet to be born, the threads from which the tapestry of every soul's karma would be woven. From the memory of the absolute darkness that had preceded him, he conceived of its opposite ignorance and illusion, Maya. He understood that the void was not truly vanquished. It remained, lurking between the stars, in the heart of every atom, and in the depths of every mind. It was the eternal potential for dissolution, the pralaya that would one day reclaim all of creation. This realization brought forth the concept of cosmic cycles, the endless breathing in and out of the absolute. His own lifespan, a vast and unimaginable number of years, was now defined, and with it, the very idea of an end. Creation was not a singular act, but a temporary phase between 2 great silences. His meditation deepened. From his mind, he willed forth the first beings, the Prajapatis, the lords of progeny. They were born not of flesh, but of pure thought Marichi, Atri, Angiras, and the others. They were the architects, the demigods who would assist him in the granular work of populating the universe. From his shadow, he created illusion. From his anger at the slow, laborious process, a being of terrifying power and purity was born, Rudra, the Howler, who emerged from between his brows, a manifestation of the destructive and transformative power necessary to correct imbalances in creation. He learned then that his own emotions, his own divine states, had consequences, birthing forces both benevolent and terrible. The universe was not only a reflection of his grand design, but also of his own internal struggles. The seeds of conflict, of dharma and adharma, of gods and asuras, were sown in these very first moments of divine introspection born from the Creator's own complex nature. 7. Closing. Reflection. And so, the cosmos as we know it took its first breath, born from a schism in a golden womb, itself a rebellious dream in the heart of an eternal silent darkness. The Mahashunya, the great void, was not destroyed but given a new purpose. It became the canvas for the stars, the silence against which the cosmic song of Om could be heard. The darkness that remains, the vast cold emptiness between worlds, is not the same as the darkness that was. It is a darkness that holds the memory of light, a silence that is pregnant with the potential for sound. It is the